So if you know anything at all about me, it's that my favorite film series is Alien. I have been watching this film franchise for a very long time. I saw the first one when I was 7, actually, and it really scared me, but that just made me more invested. So I've been a big fan of this series all the time. I was really looking forward to getting a new Alien prequel from Ridley Scott, and that is this new one, Alien Covenant. So, I will keep this spoiler free for now, but I'll let you know when I do get into that because there is a lot to discuss about this film. So, first off, I really liked this film a lot, but that comes with a few administrative points to it, and that is that I do not believe this is a film for everyone. So I recommend it, but with caution. Now, the main thing to do with that is that this is not really a true sequel to Prometheus, but it is also not really a true Alien film. It's sort of in between, which I personally feel is appropriate for this type of a film. And I liked that it was bridging this gap and we were getting some kind of interesting hybrid between these concepts. But if you're looking for really heavy of a focus on one or the other, then you might be disappointed. To give a few spoiler-free examples, this film does not necessarily follow the characters from Prometheus. They are there, but their roles are minimal, and this does not directly answer all of the questions about the origin of the xenomorph, nor does it directly answer any questions you may have had left over from Prometheus. Now, I personally felt that Prometheus was satisfactory in answering questions, but I know that there are some that do not feel they have all the information for the answers. So Alien Covenant is not going to necessarily give you enough information, I think, to form your own answers if Prometheus was not already satisfactory in that area. I will get into some more themes and theories and ideas that I have about the big questions to Prometheus, but I'll save that for the spoiler section. So that is the big warning that comes with my recommendation. If you want a traditional Alien film, this isn't it. And if you want a direct sequel to Prometheus, this isn't it either. It's something completely different. So, if that does not bother you, or you are open to that idea, then I do recommend Alien Covenant. Other spoiler-free thoughts. So I did really enjoy this movie. I really liked the way that the xenomorph and the other alien creatures were handled in the film. I thought they did a really fantastic job with that. But again, some might not like the portrayal. We'll get into that later. The characters, I enjoyed them more than the characters in Prometheus, but at the same time I feel they were still lacking that extra bit of character that was present in the original Alien films. This was a concern of mine. I had noticed with many of Ridley Scott's recent films that he seemed to sacrifice character development for pacing. Prometheus was a very well-paced movie. It flowed very fast. It was very entertaining. It never felt like there was a dull moment. But seeing the deleted scenes that were cut out of the film, there were a lot of important character moments that were not included. And I was hoping that this problem had been fixed because I really, really loved The Martian, and I felt that that had a really good character dynamic between all of the crew, even the minimal members. But unfortunately, I feel that problem was still present in Alien Covenant. The best example of this would be the prologue, The Last Supper, which was released onto YouTube as sort of a viral marketing campaign, and it was directed by Ridley Scott's son. And I feel that that video has more character between the members. Probably because there's a bit more time for them to be casual, I know, without spoiling anything. This film kicks off right away, getting into sort of the thick of it, into the action. There's not really that moment of, just relaxation and simpleness. It's quite far and away very different from the opening of the original Alien. So that might have something to do with it. We don't really have much time for these characters to sort of be casual with each other, which is unfortunate. It was something that, come to think about it, was present in all of the films, even Prometheus. We didn't get that in this one, unfortunately. Though I will say, I did really enjoy Danny McBride as Tennessee and Billy Crudup as Orm. Catherine Waterston was also really good as Daniels. I liked that she was not an obvious main character. She still is the main character, but the main focus of the film is not just on her. A lot of attention is paid to other characters like Tennessee and Orm, whereas in Prometheus, the main focus was on Shaw and David, and we knew those two were the main ones that would be making it out alive. Whereas this one sort of divided the focus a little more. They didn't receive the development I want, but I appreciate the effort. It was something I felt similar to the original Alien, where despite the fact that Ripley is the main character, she's not the obvious main character until near the end, once members of the crew begin to die. So, I liked that. The set design, visual effects, cinematography, all of the technical aspects are on point. Ridley Scott, he's definitely a director that knows what he's doing in all of those fields. My only issue would be with story and script problems, but I feel that overall this script was a lot more polished than something like Prometheus. But I have much to say, and I do find it very difficult to censor myself on spoiler issues. So I will get into the spoilers now. I'll give you a brief warning, window of time. If you don't want to be spoiled, or you don't care, we're going to get into it now. It's happening now. 3, 2, 1. Okay, the very first thing I thought of the ending was that line from Interstellar by Case. No, Tars, yes. The line from Tars. Plenty of slaves for my robot colony. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw that ending, with David having everyone in cryosleep and all of his eggs and embryos ready to experiment on. I don't know if anyone else thought that, but I thought it was clever, and I really want to be able to say that, but, that is definitely quite a spoiler. So, getting into it step by step, overall, I like that this film was very thematically and visually and soundtrack-wise similar to the first Alien. The credit sequence appears that way. There are a lot of score samples directly used from Alien. There are also a few musical cues from Prometheus, specifically the main theme, which I really liked the way that was incorporated. It was a nice way to sort of reference the ideas of Prometheus. So, first off, I really liked the intro sequence with a young David talking to a young Weyland. This was a scene that really set up this idea that this film is actually a lot closer, I think, thematically to maybe something like Blade Runner. These ideas of the synthetics or the replicants rising up above their creators, recognizing that they are superior, and perhaps have a lot more emotion and soul than what their creators think. It was a concept I liked in Prometheus as well. Weyland says that David does not have a soul, but we see this whole intro sequence with him showing elements of a curiosity and fascination and idolization as he watches Lawrence of Arabia repeats the line about the match. The trick, William Potter, is not minding that it hurts. And even styling his hair to be that way. We see all these different elements of him, and it's definitely present in this intro sequence. So I really liked that a lot. It was a different way to start off the film, but something that thematically would carry over to the rest of it. So the film wastes no time getting started, as instantly there is a neutrino burst from a nearby star, causing the ship to overload. The main crew is woken up instantly, and James Franco's character dies in his cryo chamber. So, yeah, I did have that spoiled for me by a very funny comment saying that his performance was on fire throughout. But I had already heard that his role was minimal, and if he's the captain, you can tell from the trailer that he wouldn't be making it because Daniels refers to Orm as the captain. So, again, as I mentioned in the non-spoiler section, the only problem with this intro is, yes, it is entertaining and getting us right sort of into the action, the suspense. Their ship's broken, we've got to fix it, we've got to figure things out. But the problem with that is we don't ever get to see the characters be casual, like the breakfast scene in Alien, or Aliens, or the ceremony meetings that they had in Alien 3, or just the sort of random night segments in Alien Resurrection, where they're just watching that weird gun show and Winona Ryder tries to pick up a drink while wearing boxing gloves. It was a bit of a weird scene, but, you know, like little moments like that. They're not really present for the majority of the characters. Though I do like Daniel's whole bit about wanting to build her cabin and stuff like that. That was nice. Though I do feel that perhaps if the Last Supper prologue had been included in the film, that there could have been more of an emotional attachment to James Franco's character. As it is in the film, he's just a body that you see get burnt. You know, it isn't until after, when she watches a video, that you actually realize it was James Franco. And I remember my friends I was with, they were sort of confused, like, oh, is that him? Oh, he's in this movie. That's random. Like, maybe having a big name actor was a bit distracting, but it was serviceable. So they decide to go to this planet that is seemingly good for life, because they also pick up a message from there, which they can't seem to tell what it is. So they decide to go and investigate this planet. Now, this is one point that I know many have complained about, but it doesn't bother me too much, and that is that they take their ship, they land on this alien planet, and they just waltz around without spacesuits or anything like that. Alright, it was the same complaint that people had in Prometheus about how they decided to take off their helmets in the middle of a temple because, oh, the air is breathable. But the thing is that doesn't bother me too much, because I feel that it's just simply operating by Star Trek logic. Like in so many episodes of Star Trek, no matter what planet they land on or where they are, it's breathable air, the conditions are perfectly fine for all different types of life forms, and there's never any issue like that. I mean, yeah, it is definitely a bit of a sci-fi cliche or a bit of a trope in that way, but I sort of have come to expect that in films, so that personally didn't bother me. Now, I know some say that, oh, it was a stupid decision because, as we see, there are these plants that release spores that are inhaled and sort of ingested, and that causes two of the crew members to become infected with neomorphs. But, however, the original crew in Alien, they wore their spacesuits, and they still got attacked by that facehugger. It just simply burnt through Kane's face plate. So, really, no matter what, these people were going to get screwed. So, I don't think that bothers me too much, but I know for some people that was definitely a big issue, especially when the first few trailers dropped. You know, why do these people just walk around without masks? But it's a common thing in sci-fi for me, and I know without that they wouldn't be able to do this spore thing, so that personally didn't bother me in that way. So, that's to each his own. So they go and investigate and find the crashed derelict ship. They find evidence that Shaw was there because her dog tags and pictures and outfit are there. And after that, one of the crew members, he's taken back by two of the characters. One's Ferris, and the other I know was played by Carmen Ejugo. Karen, yes, right. So they take this guy back, put him in quarantine, and I do like that Ferris didn't break quarantine before knowing what was going on. That was definitely a bit more of a reversal as to something like an Alien, where they did decide to just let Kane onto the ship. And that leads to a really great scene where the alien bursts out of his back with his spikes piercing through the skull. It's a really gruesome scene, very bloody, but I really liked that a lot. I do think it was kind of silly that Ferris tried to break quarantine to go in and shoot the thing, but at the same time it was just like this little puppy dog sized alien. She didn't know how deadly it could be. And when she misses by slipping on the blood, she does run out and seal the door. It's just that the alien breaks through the window. And I take it that window was not industrial strength because they weren't expecting a giant back-bursting alien to come crashing through it. It was just meant to prevent, like, the airborne spread. Something like that. Anyway, Ferris accidentally destroys the ship while she's shooting at the neomorph, but it still survives. And another one comes bursting out of another one of the crew members' throats. And again, these are really well done scenes because they end up getting attacked then in the field by these neomorphs, something almost like the Velociraptor attack in The Lost World. This brings to another point, a point of criticism I've heard a lot about the film, and that is the time span and life cycle growth of the alien. Now, many have complained that it seems the aliens just grow too fast in the film, but I believe this is because that the passage of time is not clearly established. For example, we see the two crew members get infected by the spores, and what seems like it may have been only 5 minutes passes when all of a sudden they're sick, they're infected, and then all of a sudden it comes bursting through. Now, I do believe, though, that it was actually meant to be over a longer period of several hours, but the film never explicitly states that. Now, some may consider this a sloppy technique, but I see this something akin as to more like Terrence Malick or Christopher Nolan, where the passage of time is not indicated through fades or any kind of sort of special transition. There are simply just cuts. So that was my interpretation of it, that they were exploring for several hours before this infection truly took place. But again, I know that is a point of contention for some. It's similar to later in the film with the chestburster and alien growth. They may have been searching around for a lot longer for Aurum than just 5 minutes. But again, this is also my issue with the film's pacing, as I talked about earlier, that the goal seems to be creating a fast-paced film, but not necessarily accounting for the time span and the length in between. So that is why I do not consider this film to be better than the first 3 Alien movies, but I do still like it more than Prometheus. After this, David shows up in his The Last Jedi outfit and takes them back to the Engineer City. Now, I know that it may seem like it was dumb for the crew to trust David, but to their knowledge, he's just simply another synthetic. They don't realize how advanced and manipulative and malicious he's become. So they couldn't possibly know that he was trying to deceive them or kill them. So we as the audience know that David is definitely not a trustworthy character, but to them he's just simply a synthetic from a mission that survived. So they take his word for it because, oh, he's just a robot. Their only other experience like that has been with Walter, and he's a very trustworthy robot who is all about duty. So I can understand that, and I can let that slide. Though, I do think it was a bit of a mistake releasing that Alien Covenant prologue before the film, as it does tip us off when David explains his story that we know he is lying. He clearly deployed the black goo and bombed all the engineers. Now, that is another point that is not fully answered in the film, that is left up to interpretation. But I believe that David basically has sworn to seek out revenge on his creators and their creators as he feels betrayed, a slave, this is something akin to themes in Blade Runner again, and we'll get more into the connections on that later. So they wait around in the temple for a bit. David has many conversations with Walter, and I loved this part of the movie. It was really great to see the ideals of these two sort of clash together. There was almost this kind of like overt sexual nature to the conversation, which some may find awkward, but I feel that was intentional, to create this sort of unease. Walter, he's very innocent and sheltered. David is much more mature, and there is this kind of sexual dominance there. So I feel that plays on a lot of the themes from the original Alien, so I liked that a lot. And it was also really cool to see David playing a flute and playing the Prometheus theme on it. So that was all really good. Though, another point on that, one of the characters, Rosenthal, she just sort of wanders off alone because, she's going to go clean up because her arm was hurt. And when she's alone, that's when we see a neomorph show up and kill her. Now, I know it's a bit of a complaint that it seems like this is a bit more cliche in that, characters announce, I'm going to go off this way, and that's when something bad happens to them. But to be fair, the original Alien film did that as well. Anytime a character goes off alone, we know they're going to die. The only real exception to that is with Ripley going off to get Jonesy and Parker and Lambert. But then the film sort of does telegraph that they're going to die by showing that they're making too much noise. So that's an issue that didn't really bother me. And at the end of the day, as much as I do love the original Alien, it really is just the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space, as Ridley Scott wanted. It is a generic slasher movie plot, just done with a very high quality script, set of actors, and budget, and visual effects, and all that. So, I can forgive these horror movie ideas and tropes that are there because they do have to exist there for some extent, as they are in the original. So, one of my other issues with the film is that Orm, he just seems to be too trusting of David. There's a really great scene where he almost seems to tame this neomorph by especially breathing on it, but Orm instantly kills it. And afterwards, he asks David to explain what's going on. And David's like, okay, sure, follow me into my laboratory. And then Orm's just like, well, you seem like a trustworthy person. Okay. Now, obviously, they still think that, he's just like some kind of synthetic, just some kind of robot. But at the same time, like, he just saw David try to defend this monster that killed Rosenthal and, like, cut off her head. Like, there has to be some kind of line when it comes to that. So, then David's like, come here, I've got to show you my perfect creation. He takes him into the egg room. And he's like, it's perfectly safe. Go ahead, touch it, see what happens. Trust me, it'll be fun. You'll love it. And I can understand, like, people are like, why do characters keep looking into these eggs and stuff? I'm like, they haven't seen the other Alien movies. They don't realize there's going to be, like, a giant spider tentacle rape monster that's going to, like, jump out and grab them all of a sudden. For all I know, it might just be, like, a little bird that, like, flutters out. But at the same time, like, David just like, go ahead, look. And he's just like, well, you seem like a very trustworthy fellow. Okay, sure, I will go stick my face in this egg. So that was just a little silly in that way. Though I do like how afterwards David's just sitting above and flicking rocks waiting for the chestburster scene to happen. I thought that was a very darkly comedic moment. Then we find out about the true fate of Shaw, which is that David has dissected her, and her face, it's kind of biomechanical, and it looks like some kind of H.R. Geiger painting. I've seen a lot of ones like that. It almost makes me think of the cover of ELP's Brain Salad Surgery. Great album, by the way. I know there'll definitely be some who don't like this, that, they just killed her off, between movies, behind the scenes, and it's the same terrible thing they did to Hicks and Newt. But, I mean, for me personally, I'm okay with Hicks and Newt dying, and I'm okay with Shaw dying this way. And it's very rare that anybody gets any sort of a happy ending in these films. I was okay with it in Alien 3 because it really hammered in that nihilistic point. It brought Ripley to her lowest point where she literally has nothing left to live for, and completely reinvents her as a character. She is still vulnerable. She's still human. And I liked this with Shaw because the whole point is that she was this believer in God. And the theme in Prometheus that seemed to come up a lot was this idea that, maybe God is not on our side, right? What if God hates us, right? That is what it was with the engineers who created humanity. They hated humanity. They became disappointed with their creation. Why? Maybe it's because we stopped worshipping them. There is a theory that I have, and I believe was in the original script, that Jesus was either an engineer or at least was sort of like a servant of the engineers. Because this whole big outbreak that occurred in Prometheus was 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, they decided they want to get rid of humanity. Throughout this time, they had constantly been going to Earth and getting humans to worship them with this specific star chart to this planet. And we know that that is just a weapons facility. It's not their home planet. So my personal interpretation is that all of these signs were a warning. You must obey us, or else we will rain death from this place up here. And what happened? Well, they crucified Jesus. And so then the engineers decide, we will rain death upon, and we will strike down with great wrath and furious vengeance, as we said we would. However, there is an outbreak, and this kills most of the engineers before they're able to complete their mission, which is why the first thing that happens when the engineer wakes up and sees that humans are still around is he goes and tries to kill them again. So that's my interpretation for why the engineers wanted to kill humanity, even though we created them. But again, that is all hypothetical. And if that answer is not satisfactory to people, then the film is not going to provide another one. You do have to do your own interpretation on that. But getting back to this idea, Shaw was a true believer, and yet despite that, she still comes to a very terrible end. She does not have this happy ending. Did she ever really get to truly see paradise, or was it just all some kind of false hope to believe that, if you're a good person, you get to go into paradise? We don't know. But then again, it's the same way in real life. We don't know. Depending on what your faith is, but obviously that is a conversation for another day, and not necessarily in a science fiction movie where giant aliens with elongated heads spew out a second mouth and blow people's brains out. But that's what it was. I think that was a bit of an interesting commentary on that, is it worth it? What does believing truly do? Ridley Scott's definitely done a lot of these religious themes in his other films, especially like Exodus, God and Kings. I thought it was a very interesting choice to have God played by a little angry boy, But I won't get into too many of the other themes, but I was okay with Shaw's death in this film. And David obviously was not in his right mind. As we see later, he tries to rape Daniels, and he seems to imply that he raped Shaw because he really liked her a little too much. So we see what happens with androids when they have these conflicting ideals. Though I do really love the Blade Runner reference in the scene when Daniels fights David. And first it is that an android gets stabbed with a nail, just like Roy Batty did. He stabbed his own hand in Blade Runner. And then also, David, he joyfully says, "That's the spirit," which is also what Roy said. I really liked that, just him sort of getting into and enjoying having this kind of conflict with this character. So Walter and David then have a fight, because Walter also does really like Daniels, but probably not to the creepy same extent that David liked Shaw. And we don't see who wins the fight. At this point, David, he's cut his hair to appear more like Walter. And now, the idea is that we don't know, it's ambiguous, and I know some people have complained that, oh, it was totally obvious it was David, right? But at the same time, I like that it's ambiguous because it does keep you questioning. There is this idea of this hope. I know one of my friends, he was so disappointed to find out in the end that that was David, because he was hoping for a good ending. But I kind of like that. It's this idea that we want the good ending, and if the film is able to pull the rug out from under you and make you upset, then, well, I guess it did succeed in thwarting your expectations. Not necessarily that you thought that that was Walter, but just that you were really hoping it was. So I liked that, although there is such an obvious clue that it is David that I'm really disappointed I didn't pick up on that. And that is that it's established that Walter's skin heals, yet as we can see, this android, he has cuts on his face, and they don't automatically heal. Therefore, it must be David, because he's an older model. So, at this point, the chestburster has grown into the full xenomorph, starts attacking the crew. Tennessee is able to come down with a landing vehicle, and there's that scene you see in the trailer where it's climbing on and he's trying to fling it off while Daniels is flinging around on a rope attached to it. I thought that was a really great sequence, very well done, some really great xenomorph action there. That they managed to defeat the alien by crushing it in a crane, and everything seems fine and well. They're gonna take off on their mission. The other two characters, they're gone off to have, make-up shower sex, and everything's fine. But there's a rule of Alien, and that is that there is always one more. Happens in all the films. And it turns out that, I'm not entirely sure on this, but, because I've heard two theories on this, and that is that Sergeant Lope, who almost was face-hugged, he still managed to get impregnated. It just took a while for the embryo to grow. Or the other theory that I have heard is that Tennessee announces that Mother is going to be offline for 8 hours. We cut to a scene where Daniels is waking up from a nap, and Mother is talking, which means that she's already back online to a certain extent. So this may indicate that the 8 hours have passed, therefore implying that the embryo did have a long development cycle to grow to a full xenomorph. Or, since we know that Walter is actually David in disguise, and that he was carrying several embryos inside, perhaps he was able to regurgitate one and use this to infect Lope, who was sedated in the medical bay, thus allowing him to become the host for a new xenomorph. So, that could be the reason. I'm not sure. If it is just that the facehugger was able to quickly implant an embryo, well, maybe. We don't know. I mean, it was close to death, so it could have worked pretty fast. But that is a point up for debate, and I do think it is a little flimsy, so that's another reason why I wouldn't really like that aspect of the film. But in any case, it gets us to a very more traditional Alien setting. There's that really great alien kill in the shower scene. That was a really great sequence. I do think it could have gone on maybe a little bit longer, maybe something more akin to the Parker Lambert death, but I did like it for what it was. Very violent, very bloody. And then this leads to Daniels and Tennessee figuring out a plan to flush the alien out into space. Now, for those who complain that it's a little too similar to the original Alien, it's also the same climax to Aliens, and also to Alien Resurrection. That's just a thing, you know. You've got to blow the alien out into space, or drop it in lava, or wait for a giant facehugger squid thing to come by to get it. So I'm okay with that. That's just an element of an alien movie. You've got to flush it out in space. You know, it just seems like an essential part for me. So they're able to defeat it. Again, really great sequence. A nice little reference as well with Daniel saying, "I got you, you son of a bitch," which of course Ripley said after destroying the Nostromo. And once again, all seems fine. They go into hypersleep, and it's revealed that Walter is David because he was not able to properly answer a question Daniels had about her cabin. And so that leads to my Interstellar reference. Plenty of slaves for my robot colony, or in this case, alien colony. I really like how he puts on the Das Rheingold from Wagner, which he played on the piano in the opening scene, puts the embryos away, and gets set off by sending out a very alien-type message about being the last survivor with the crew in hypersleep. Now, some may be disappointed that we still don't know specifically how a engineer ship ended up on LV-426 with a cargo of alien eggs, especially because we don't know when that ship crashed and how that ship has these eggs when those seem to have been specifically designed by David, doing a bunch of genetic experimentation, manipulation, crossbreeding, and all that stuff. So that's not answered. I'm okay with that because I like forming my own theories, and I'm interested to see what future films do. But if you were hoping to get that, then obviously this film is definitely going to disappoint you in that aspect. But again, for certain things like why the engineers want to wipe out humanity, I felt I already had enough information from Prometheus, so the fact that this film didn't really give more information to that, I'm okay with. The question of why David wanted to destroy the engineers, I think, is just an extension of him wanting to destroy his creator because he feels like he's superior. It's a theme that I've seen in a lot of other Ridley Scott films. It seems to be this bit where a loving embrace turns into actually a setup for an attack. This was in Blade Runner when Roy kisses Tyrell, but then all of a sudden crushes his head. This was similar in Alien Covenant, where David kisses Walter and then all of a sudden stabs him through the neck with the flute. It was also in Prometheus, when the engineer strokes David's head, but then picks him up, twists his head off, and then bashes Weyland with it. So it's a very theme that's present, this idea of the creation surpassing the creator. And I like that this shows that David created the xenomorphs because it's an extension of the creation surpassing the creator. Very deliberate reference to Frankenstein. And I like all that stuff, these themes like that. So, if you don't want that, then don't watch Alien Covenant. Don't consider it. You can watch the originals and have the xenomorph just be this very strange biomechanical organism. But I do like this idea that the xenomorph is the end result of humanity's quest for discovery and creation and superiority. It's the tagline of Prometheus: the search for mankind's beginning could lead to our end. The path to paradise begins in hell. Very, of course, deliberately playing on the themes of Paradise Lost. I myself haven't personally read Paradise Lost because I'm an uncultured swine, but I know that the intention was for Alien to play off of a lot of the themes of that, specifically because the original title for this film was Alien: Paradise Lost. But other than that, I can't think of too many other things that I want to say off the top of my head. Just to reiterate some of the main ideas that, no, this film is not perfect, but I do really enjoy it. and I would still place it behind the first three Alien films. I'm actually a fan of Alien 3, so perhaps if you're not the biggest fan of Alien 3, then maybe you would place this one over that. But obviously it's better than the Alien vs. Predator movies, and I do like it better than Prometheus because this felt a little more focused and less unforgivable plot holes relative to the script, at least in my opinion. And it's better than Alien Resurrection because I don't have to view it as a dark comedy to enjoy it. But I don't want to spoil too many thoughts on the other Alien films because eventually I would like to give reviews for all of them, but we never know with my sporadic scheduling. So, thanks for watching. Once again, overall, I do really like Alien Covenant. I'm definitely going to be seeing it again, but I do recognize that it's not for everyone, and I do understand some of the complaints about it. Alright, that's all I have to say. Have a good night.